Well, good afternoon, Paul. Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance.
Hey, Henry.
So, Paul and I, one of my very good friends, even though we live in separate cities now, we grew up together in Arlington, Virginia. He's still in Arlington, Virginia. When I go up to visit, which I like to do fairly often, I'll often end up staying at his house because he's a very generous person. And I was thinking before this call of all the things that we have shared over the years. We're at each other's weddings. Our parents were friends. We've been to funerals, unfortunately. We
I
our
prefer
brothers,
weddings over funerals, Henry.
yes, sir. Our brothers are both doctors and both trained at the Mayo Clinic, as did your father. I used to go see your father if I had various orthopedic injuries. I played golf with your dad. And really, the story still goes on. So I'm very glad to have you here because although I know some of the
We
story,
played,
I'm
a- we
not.
played a lot of golf together, and I actually had the best shot of my life playing with you down in Dallas one day.
That's right. That's right. I remember that very well. So I'll let you tell the story because it's very exciting. I know it has to do with your daughter's best friend, and your daughter is a part of this as well. And you have a long experience in the biopharmaceutical industry, but lately you have, not that lately, but in the last number of years, you took a big chance, which I think is going to pay off for you and for lots of people, and became an entrepreneur full-fledged. Um, how did you? How did that get started? In your own words.
Well, as I often say, doing startups is no country for old men. I remind myself that the founders of Home Depot, Ken Langone, and who's the other guy? Um,
That's okay.
Shucks. Uh, Lives down in Atlanta. Those guys started Home Depot at age 55. So we're not too old to do this, Henry, but I would recommend being an entrepreneur to people much younger than us. No,
Bernard Marcus, is that who you were thinking of?
Bernie Marcus.
Yeah,
That's
Bernie
right.
Marcus. Yeah.
They didn't start Home Depot until they were 55, I think.
I
Anyway,
actually didn't know that story. That's pretty cool.
yeah. But we started the company because this disease found us. I'd been in the biopharmaceutical world my entire career. Uh, Johnson and Johnson, Amgen, Boehringer Ingelheim. But it wasn't until my daughter's best friend, some of our best friends' daughter, was diagnosed with this very deadly bone disease called osteosarcoma in February of 2017. I'm looking out the window from my house. I can see their house from here. And I know I'm ruining the suspense, but I'm going to tell the end of the story first because Olivia is doing great and she's been 6 years cancer free now, and she sits on the board of OS Therapies. But when she got sick, there weren't a lot of options, and half the kids that get this disease end up dying of the disease. So we wanted to make sure we changed the odds for Olivia. And then in the long run, we've realized we think we can change the odds for not only kids with osteosarcoma, but maybe some other solid tumors as well. It would certainly be my life's work if I were just to impact the overall survival of just one small rare disease. But just imagine, Henry, if we could do this with some other solid tumors as well. Frankly, blood tumors, the industry's been very successful in a lot of blood tumors. The solid tumors have been challenging. And just like osteosarcoma, breast cancer, or some of these other bigger cancers, they present as a solid tumor. It gets resected. The body gets blasted with chemo and radiation. And if the disease doesn't come back, the patient's fine and they live their life the rest of their life, or maybe some side effects from the long-term side effects from the chemo and radiation. But in general, they live their life, the rest of their life, relatively normal. And half the kids that get osteosarcoma, it comes back. And in solid tumors, when it comes back, it doesn't usually come back to the place where it originated. In breast cancer, it doesn't come back to the breast. It actually, these little micrometastases are looking for two things: oxygen and soft tissue. And as a result, they end up landing in the lungs and the brain. And it's the same with osteosarcoma, same with breast cancer, same with a lot of solid tumors. And that's where your survival rate drops. So we wanted to find a way of preventing those little Darwinian bastards that survive the chemo and radiation from landing in the lungs and the brain. And we ended up, first of all, starting a nonprofit. My daughters were on the board of that. I helped fund it. Obviously, Olivia's father helped start that as well and fund it. And we raised, I think, close to $3 million for osteosarcoma research. And a week before, we had a bunch of doctors coming into town to really teach them about the importance of genetic testing. I read in our trade magazine about a technology that was being given up, and I knew why, and because osteosarcoma is a very rare disease. But what we've done is build a company around that disease, but also built it around other solid tumors as well. Long answer. Sorry.
No, that's a terrific answer. Yeah, and I was struck by that because I remember you started, and actually I met Olivia and I know her father from growing up in Arlington. Parents knew each other, same kind of thing. So it is a very close circle, and what a terrific family as is yours. Um, do the Yeah, I remember when you made that step to, and I recall, and I may be off on this, but you went from basically one cancer to three, and then if you get one of the three or all three of the three, then you can take that expertise and that research and knowledge and help with all sorts of other cancers. So it's not exactly like you got to hit this target. You're making progress no matter what, is the layman's terms from my understanding of medical research. Is that accurate? Or can you correct me where I'm off on that?
Well, I think there are a couple questions in there, and I'll try and kind of parse it out with the appropriate answers. First of all, when we started the company, we started before that with a nonprofit. That nonprofit and 7 or 8 other nonprofits have invested in the company because their primary mission is advancing research. So we do have a clinical trial going right now that is being paid for by those investments, and that is advancing research. It is going well. We have 41 kids that have been enrolled across 21 different facilities across the country, children's hospitals across the country, and they're receiving our therapy. It's stimulating the body's immune system to go out and fight these little micrometastases. But if it seems to be going well, but if that trial did fail, the mission of those nonprofits still would have been fulfilled, in that they would be advancing research. But if it does well, and if we're successful and we develop a new treatment for osteosarcoma, which would be the first new treatment in over 40 years, then they've done more than just advanced research. They've brought a new therapy to market. Vertex is a pharmaceutical company that was financially supported by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation a few years ago to the tune of $150 million. The royalties that Vertex sold and gave the proceeds to the cystic fibrosis was $5.3 billion or $4.3 billion. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation can now use that money to not only develop more treatments, because there aren't many treatments for cystic fibrosis, just like there aren't any new treatments for osteosarcoma. They can then start working on cures and then ultimately prevention, which is what nonprofits of diseases are all about, right? Is treat, cure, prevent. So I think that was one of your questions. The other question is when we first started, we were a one-hit wonder. We had this one technology for osteosarcoma. As a business model, that is very challenging. If we failed on our clinical trial that's going on now, which I don't think it is, it seems to be working pretty well. There are certainly kids alive that wouldn't be alive otherwise. But if we had failed with that just one technology, we would have been done. And I think we have a better ability to affect not just osteosarcoma, but other solid tumors, because if this does work in osteosarcoma, we'll do a bundle trial, phase 3 bundle trial in other solid tumors, But we also brought on another technology that's really hot in the biotech space right now. It's called antibody drug conjugates, otherwise known as ADCs. And if you look at the last 20, 25 deals over the last 12 to 14 months in the biotech space, the big ones, anywhere from 400 million to 43 billion, are in this ADC space. And what that is, I always often describe it as a cruise missile with payloads attached to it, with these little silicone linkers, which is our intellectual property special sauce, which are pH sensitive. But that targeting ligand directs the whole cruise missile, if you will, to a certain part of the body where the cancer is located. And then the cancer environment eats away at those silicone linkers and drops these multiple payloads into and around the cancer environment, debulking these large solid tumors. So our original technology is to prevent those little micrometastases from landing in the lungs. Our next technology, which is the really hot ADC space, and for which we have some very particular next generation advantages, is really to debulk these large solid tumors. So both of our platform technologies dovetail nicely to each other.
Wow. And from a business standpoint, right now, I admire your perseverance as a fellow entrepreneur. I know it takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness, I'll call it. And I know you made public about how you cashed in some of your retirement, and so it wasn't like you were coasting in this with an extra whole amount of money to fund this thing without any problem. You took some sacrifice.
Yeah, Henry, what you're referring to was a quote in the Arlington magazine, our local community magazine that Henry and I grew up in, and that was an incredible article about why we developed the company, and there was only one misquote in the entire thing. It said that I had said that we cashed in. I had said that I had cashed in my retirement for this. I never told the reporter that. It was actually my chief medical officer who told her that, because I would never have actually brought that up. But yeah, my daughter's college funds are in this. My retirement funds in this. The boat has pushed off the dock.
Well, that's also a story of a lot of entrepreneurs I've known that have whatever you think of Elon Musk. I'm reading his biography, and he's re-upped with all his money like 3 or 4 times at this point. And so that's hey, maybe you're the next. I don't know. Are you going to be the wealthiest man in the world? That's a pretty big step. But I think you're more concerned about saving some lives and making a contribution. So
I'll tell you, and Henry, I learned this at J&J, and it anyone that has worked at J&J, it's usually a kind of a guiding principle for them. Every decision we make, it is about the patient first. So if we have the decision to make, what's the best interest of the patient? And then obviously, what's in the best interests of caregivers, of the community, and our shareholders. But I think if you do the other three, then the shareholders will do just fine. This is what I call a do good, do well investment. And, to be part of our mission to have helped with treatments around a very rare disease in kids, it's a horrible disease, and then it attacks teenagers after puberty in the long bones. So if you think this is your distal femur, so this is the start of your kneecap, this would be your tibia. There's bone plates right here and in the tibia and the distal humerus or proximal humerus of the shoulder, where the bone plate comes together after puberty. And as a result, because girls get puberty a little earlier than boys, girls get it a little earlier than boys, osteosarcoma. And there's just a miscalculation in that growth plate coming together. And that's where the osteosarcoma takes hold.
well, it really is heartbreaking when you hear the stories and then hear it graphically. But the positive thing is success is in the air as far as the trials and as far as what's working and as far as continuing to be able to provide the financing to advance not only research but cures. So I think you have to have steps along the way. So congratulations on
Thank you.
a number of the first few steps, and I believe there'll be many, many more successful ones to come. And thanks for sharing this from your heart. And because I know you, I know it's patients first. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy.
Talk to you soon, Paul.